I've got this second bed tilled up, spawned, covered, and then I've taken 2 5-kilogram blocks of coconut coir, hydrated it up, and spread it out on top. And that'll give a bit more moisture retention for the bed. And also too, it'll be a good visual indicator of the moisture on top, because the coconut coir likes to go to a light brown color when it dries, and it does it fairly quickly too. So I'm going to get this covered with plastic just like the last one, covered with shade cloth as well. And looks like I got room for the third one right here in between this bush that I cut down. You can see I chopped all this down and removed the tall stuff. I couldn't get at it with the weed whacker, it was too thick. But yeah, I'll put another bed here, then probably skip to the other side of this bush and put a couple more beds on the other side. Here's the last major row of Americana. And you can see that I've done something a little bit different with this row. Instead of having the hoops come to a point in the center and have a little bit narrow profile, I've widened the row a little bit. Well, at least widened the space between the stakes a little bit. The row is really about the same size. And then bent the PVC at the ends with my knee instead of in the center. You can see still has a little bit of a hoopness to it. They'll keep it from caving in with any weight on top. But that way I should get a little bit more surface area underneath the shade cloth for mushrooms to grow. However, though, I am thinking about whether or not that's a good idea for the misting system I'm going to be using, where it's not enough clearance from the ground to the top of the hoop for the mist to spread out. So maybe on these kind of beds I'll run 2 lines going up, one going one side, one going up the other side, and that way I'll give a bit more even misting. And yeah, I was going to go ahead and rearrange the stakes on these two, but I think I'm going to keep these the way they are, just to make just at least for the case of experimentation, to see if I can do adequate misting with one line going up in the very center. And of course, I can always change my mind at the start of the season if I feel the mist isn't spreading out well enough and getting the area nice and humid and bumping up the relative humidity. So I'm going to get the shade cloth on this and take a look at how the profile looks. It's the next day, and I have this shade cloth over the hoops. And you can tell it's about 6 inches wider profile than these 2 other beds. You can see comparison. So hopefully that'll translate to more space with a higher humidity for the mushrooms to pop up. And of course I'm hoping too that all the space in between will get utilized. This spring, let's hope that it stays moist and that many morels pop up around these beds as well. So I think I'm only going to put 1 more bed up here, just to the same side of the yard right here next to all these. I got to bust out another bush that's still in that fire pit area. And then I'll move on to probably ripping out tomatoes from my main garden back here. It'll be the first thing to be done, and start using up the space in there. I figure since I'm using about 40 bags, well, about 20 bags per 40-foot row, and my garden rows are about 80 feet, so that's going to be about another 8 worth of these rows. So I'm not going to have too many bags left over, probably just enough to do some raised bed areas up by my house, and maybe some more for experimentation too. Because these single misting units that I have, as you've seen in my previous videos, really don't have a great spread of mist, at a short distance, we're going to need something better for these low profile beds. And so I found these 4-way misters off of AliExpress.com, a great website, by the way, to get cheap Chinese goods to you. Just takes a few weeks. But these 4-way misters will make a nice spread of mist in all 4 directions except for the bottom, although they'll probably drip some mist because they make these same misters with an anti-drip module in them. But we don't care if it drips. It actually is a good thing. It'll just, hydrate up the bed directly underneath of it. But also, too, we can probably arrange these in a plus and a cross pattern alternating, and that way we get really good coverage for, at least probably about 5 or 6 feet wide of the bed. Also, I'll be ordering some of these DHT22 temperature and humidity sensors. These are meant to be hooked up to a microcontroller such as an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi. I myself really like the ESP32 microcontroller, so I'll probably be using that. And hopefully I'll have a network set up outside, probably in the garden space, that I can read from the sensors and have a log file, maybe even an alarm that it can send to me, a message when the humidity reaches a certain point or something like that. All kinds of things we can do with this. And maybe ultimately be able to have a system that can stand alone and turn on solenoid valves to allow water into different areas of the garden to mist to bump up the humidity when it senses that the humidity is low.